Welcome back into Sportsmemo's betting podcast. College football, every game on the board. Week 5, segment 2. We're going rotation numbers 118 down to 150 here with MidMajor Matt. MidMajor Matt, welcome in. How you doing today, buddy?
I am doing well. I know I said this last time, but hard to believe we are, a quarter through the college football season already so far?
Oh, man. Are we already a quarter? Week 5, that means a quarter way through till the national championship?
Pretty much, approximately. I mean, it just feels like with 4 weeks in, I feel like we're starting to figure some teams out and starting to get some really good spot plays to come into focus.
Yeah, good stuff, man. And I mean, especially for you getting into conference play with these smaller conferences, it's I'm guessing, have you looked back at your past performance and seen like what weeks you do better at than, early in the season or later in the season?
Well, it's actually ironic because I'm not saying I don't do well in conference play, but I like the angles of some of the smaller conference teams going up against the bigger teams because they don't take them seriously and things like that. There's some angles there. Not to say that there's not angles in like the MAC conference or Conference USA, but I like when these guys are out fighting against teams that they usually don't fight against because a lot of times they don't take them very seriously.
All right, well, let's give the people what they're here to listen to, Matt. And we're talking 119-120, first game up, segment 2 here. Battle of the directional Michigan schools, Central Michigan versus Western Michigan. We got a total of 59.5, minus 18. That's Western Michigan, the Broncos, hosting the Chippewas. You interested in hearing the directional Michigan schools, Matt?
Well, I was very surprised by what Central Michigan has done since losing their quarterback, Quentin Dormady. They destroyed Akron. I was on the wrong side of that one because I figured Akron was going to win. And then they played Miami really close last week, losing only 17-12. I think that says a lot about Miami, that they couldn't put away a bad Chippewas team. Western Michigan lost to my alma mater last week, Syracuse 52-33. They also, in the process, lost Dwayne Eskridge, who played both cornerback and wide receiver. Levante Bellamy also got banged up, although they do expect him to play. It's a big number, but Western Michigan's both home games, they've won 48-13 and 57-10. We could see a lot of points in this one if Central Michigan holds up their end of the bargain.
And you said one of their best players is out, the wide receiver?
Dwayne Eskridge, who is playing both wide receiver and cornerback, got hurt in the Syracuse game, and so that's a big loss on both sides of the ball because they were kind of using them on each end.
Good stuff there, Matt. And next game up, we got SMU at South Florida, seeing the Mustangs laying 7 in the hook on the highway, 62 the total in Raymond James Stadium.
So SMU's 4-0. They're coming off that big 41-38 win over TCU. I believe that means that they win the Iron Skillet, which is a rather emotional game. This is a second straight road contest, third overall for the Mustangs, who've suddenly found life offensively. Shane Buechele coming over from Texas. They've scored 37, 49, 47, and 41. These are the numbers we expected USF to score this year with their new system under Kerwin Bell. They have the Cronkite kid. They have Blake Barnett. So far, that has not come to fruition. They lose to Wisconsin 49-0. They lose to Georgia Tech 14-10. They beat the FCS opponent 55-16, and then they get the bye week where you would think they would clean things up. Spot play considering here on USF, considering SMU on the road against an emotional win, but you probably could see a lot of points in this one. 62 may not be enough.
Next game up here, we head to Matchin, Buffalo at Miami of Ohio, seeing Buffalo minus 2.5, Lance Leopold's team on the road, 47 the total, Matt.
Yes, and so there's this weird thing, this weird chain that's been going on. You have Maryland, who comes off the big win against Syracuse. They fall flat against Temple in a revenge spot that they just probably weren't very focused in. And then Temple, after beating Maryland, gets all the hype. The defense looks really good. They fall flat in a revenge spot against Buffalo after they lost to the Bulls 2 years ago. Now you've got a Buffalo team on the road against Miami of Ohio as they start conference play. Already the third road game for the Bulls. They lost at Penn State. They lost at Liberty. This team goes as Jared Patterson and Kevin Marks goes because they want to run the ball. They want to kill clock. This is one of the few teams in the country that actually huddles. There's not a lot of teams that do that. When you look at Miami of Ohio, I mean, everybody's kind of familiar with what happened to them last week. Unfortunately, they lost, 76-5 to Ohio State. They were up 5-0, and then Ohio State puts up that 76 straight. The worst part of this game for them, 3 offensive linemen banged up. Brett Gabbert is banged up. That's why you kind of see Miami, Ohio was opened as a favorite, but now Buffalo is the favorite in this one. I don't know if I'm laying the points with Buffalo on the road, but you can understand why the line movement's happening.
We just talked about Buffalo. They had Heck of a performance against Temple, and Temple's the next team we're going to be talking as they host Georgia Tech, rebuilding Georgia Tech here. Total of 49, minus 8.5 seems to be about the consensus number with the Owls laying at home.
Well, the big storyline here is Jeff Collins going back and playing against his old team. And you always have to wonder, everybody talks about the coach and the players, but do the players know what Jeff Collins wants to do, or does Jeff Collins know what the players want to do? So you kind of have to factor that in when you have this handicap. Georgia Tech coming off of an embarrassing loss at home to the Citadel, 27-24 in overtime. They had 2 weeks to hear about it. They had 2 weeks to hear about how terrible they are. This is kind of a big number. Temple's offense is very inconsistent. Anthony Russo throws too many passes. He has too many errant passes at times. I think this number's a little high. I also think the total might be a little high because Temple's offense is a little inconsistent, but their defense is really good. The key is Sean Bradley, who was called for targeting in the first half of the Buffalo game, which was a bogus targeting. Don't get me started on that, but he will be available for this one, and you have to figure with the heart of their defense in there, they're going to play a whole lot better than they did in New York.
Matt, let's head to the ACC up next. NC State at Florida State. This one in Tallahassee. -7, the Seminoles laying in Doak. 61.5 the total.
Everybody was ready to bury Florida State again. They were losing to Louisville at home. James Blackman gets hurt. And in comes Alex Hornibrook, the Wisconsin transfer. Throws a couple of touchdowns in the fourth quarter. They beat Louisville 35-24. So all's right in Florida State land, you would assume. In comes NC State. They get the workman-like victory over Ball State, but Matthew McKay at quarterback hasn't been as good as he should be. Now, it's been pointed out to me, and I talked to an ACC guy today on my radio show, NC State fans are used to Jacoby Brissett, Russell Wilson, Mike Glennon, and they had a lot of NFL pro-style quarterbacks, so they could be a little spoiled with regards to the Matthew McKay kid. Bailey Hockman behind him has the talent and has been able to run this offense somewhat. He had a couple nice runs, but he also threw an interception. This thing is approaching 7 points. I have to dig into it a little bit more, but NC State, potentially, if their defense shows up, could make this very interesting.
Heading to the Big 12 next, Matt, we got Iowa State, the Cyclones, on the road in Waco, Texas, taking on the Baylor Bears. 56.5 the total, with the Cyclones laying 2.5 or 3, depending where you're shopping.
Well, the Cyclones, last week, I'll admit once again, I thought Louisiana Monroe at a noon kickoff, a sleepy spot. I mean, Iowa State did exactly what they had to, 72-20. Louisiana Monroe moved the ball up and down early. They had a couple turnovers, and then Iowa State woke up from their slumber and won this game rather easily. This is their first true road game of the year. This is a team that last year was a favorite on the road just once. They are 3-1 against the spread under Matt Campbell as their head coach. Baylor, look, they won 21-13 at awful Rice last week. They are 3-0. The Charlie Brewer kid is running this offense to perfection right now. I don't know necessarily if I have a play in this one, but, Baylor's playing pretty well. If you get the Iowa State team that played in the first half of Louisiana Monroe, then Baylor could win this one outright.
And which Charlie Brewer's story again? Which school did he transfer from? Do you remember, Matt?
Charlie Brewer came over. I'm trying to remember because I get him confused with the Brewer kid who came over from Texas Tech and played for Virginia Tech. Charlie
that's
Brewer.
What I was thinking. Okay.
Yes, Charlie Brewer is a little different than Brewer who came over from Texas Tech and went and played at Virginia Tech.
Yeah, no, I got those kids confused because I was going to the whole Virginia Tech thing. So never mind on that. We got BYU at Toledo up next in the Glass Bowl, 60.5 being the total. -2.5, that's BYU, the Fighting Mormons, laying on the road.
I was, last week I'm kicking myself because it kind of expected. They just ran out of gas against Washington. When you play Utah, Tennessee, and USC your first 3 weeks, and you win those 2 games, and you go with overtime in 2 of those games, you're just going to run out of gas if you're BYU because you're just not ready to play this kind of schedule. So sleepy spot here in terms of they head to Toledo. I love the Glass Bowl. Love Toledo. Their offense is always very dynamic. They've got some solid wide receivers. They've got the Kovac kid at running back. The question is, did BYU wake up from their slumber last week, or will they continue on the road against a MAC school who usually doesn't get this many high-profile teams in their building?
Matt, next game up, we're talking Akron at UMass, 2 of the bottom programs in all of FBS right now, and you're going to have to lay a point spread here with the Zips on the road. That speaks to where the Minuteman program is, but they do have Walt Bell at the helm in a rebuilding effort, 63 being the total. No way I'm betting the under.
No, you can't bet the under here. UMass this year has allowed 48 to Rutgers, 45 to Southern Illinois, 52 to Charlotte, and 62 to Coastal Carolina last week. If you're betting the over, you're assuming that the Minutemen are going to do a lot of heavy lifting here because Akron on offense has scored 3, 20, 24, and 7. These are two of the worst teams in the country. And listen, there are so many games on this card that are a lot better than this game. Even as a mid-major guy, I think you could do a whole lot better than betting either of these two teams or the total in this game at 3:30.
All right. And he's MidMajor Matt. Look at his page on sportsmemo.com on a good streak here in college and NFL football. Also, MLB he's still got going on. So you can get his 3-day all-access pass. We got a special coupon code here for only $29. That's good savings there at sportsmemo.com using the coupon code MM29. You'll get his 3-day pass for only $29, less than $10 a day at sportsmemo.com. 3-day pass, only $29. Coupon code MM29 at checkout. Let's head to the Big Ten. Rutgers at Michigan here. MidMajor Matt, minus 28, 4 touchdowns, pretty even across the board right now, 49 being the total.
In theory, this should be an easy win for Michigan. You're coming off an embarrassing loss to Wisconsin. You're home. It's a noon kickoff, and in comes Rutgers, a team that you've regularly handled. You beat them last year 42-7 in Piscataway. You beat them 35-14 at home. You beat them the last couple of years. You had another big win against them. But I can't trust Michigan right now. There is so much, I don't know necessarily it's turmoil, but there's just a lot of question marks. Is Shea Patterson the right quarterback? How healthy is the freshman running back? Because there were a lot of rumors on Twitter that the Charbonnet kid was hurt. He came out there and played against Wisconsin, didn't play very well. I'd love to say that Michigan's going to come out here and win this thing by 3 or 4 or 5 touchdowns, but I just can't. Rutgers has shown a pulse. They lost 30-16 at home against Boston College. They beat UMass in week 1. They played terribly in Iowa in week 2. I'll never tell anybody to take Rutgers, but noon spot, possibly unfocused Michigan. If they don't come out and punch them in the mouth early, maybe Rutgers hangs around. I'm not recommending anything in this game. I'm just giving some information that you may want to consider.
I always love the information. That's what this podcast is for. Sports bettors everywhere enjoying it. Matt, we got 137, 138 staying in the Big Ten, -2. Minnesota Golden Gophers laying on the road, 55 the total.
I would not touch this game yet until we know what's going on with Elijah Sindelar. The quarterback is in a questionable status right now. He had an injury, and without him, Purdue's just not the same team, and that's why you've kind of seen a flip because I believe Purdue opened as the favorite, and now Minnesota's the favorite, and I think that's the people early on jumping on and hoping that Sindelar doesn't play. Minnesota coming off a bye week. They are potentially a fraudulent 3-0. They barely beat South Dakota State. They needed 2 overtimes to win at Fresno State, and then they barely beat Georgia Southern at home. This is a team that wants to run the ball with Ibrahim and Rodney Smith. The least amount of stuff that the quarterback can do here is better, but I can't say anything unless I know what Sindelar is playing or not. If Sindelar is playing, I think there's a chance that I look at Purdue, but until I know, I can't really say anything on this one.
MidMajor Matt, let's get back in your comfort zone here. Louisiana Lafayette at Georgia Southern, Sunbelt action here in Statesboro, Georgia. -3.5. The Raging Cajuns laying on the road, 55 the total.
So this one's going to probably be on my card on Saturday, so I'm not going to tell the official play, but I'll give some information here. As I said, Georgia Southern nearly knocked off Minnesota last time out. They had a bye week to kind of absorb it. The best thing I think for these mid-major teams when they play these high-major teams is if you get a week off or if you get a softer opponent in between, then I feel a little bit better as opposed to some of these teams who stack the majors and stack them and continue to just get their paychecks, and then they get beaten up a la Miami of Ohio. Georgia Southern is 1-2. Louisiana is 3-1. They beat Ohio last week on the road, 45-25. It's been a really good offense from the Raging Cajuns. This is a matchup of two teams that I like to bet on in the Sun Belt.
All right, Matt, let's move to what Conference USA versus Big Ten. Middle Tennessee here, 52.5 at Iowa. That was the total. -23.5 here. The Hawkeyes laying in Iowa City.
Middle Tennessee, this is year 1 after 19 years of Brett Stockstill at quarterback. The Blue Raiders are 1-2 so far. They will lose at Michigan in a game that probably shouldn't have been that close, but of course Michigan, as we talked about, is a shell of themselves. They beat Tennessee State, and then they lose to Duke at home. Middle Tennessee, gets the bye week here. and then they get Iowa, who is also coming off a bye week. I don't like a lot about this Middle Tennessee team. Their offense has been very shaky and inconsistent against FBS opponent. Iowa has Michigan on the road next week. Not saying that necessarily they're going to be looking ahead to that one. But thankfully for them, they've had 2 weeks since the win at Iowa State 18-17 in a game I still don't know how they won. I'm not a big guy with regards to betting on Iowa, but Middle Tennessee doesn't show me very much this year so far.
So I'm seeing a 14, and I'm not a big rankings guy, Matt, but I'm guessing you don't think Iowa is a top 15 program, do you?
I do not. But I'll also honestly say, sticking with my mid-major moniker, I try and get away from the Big Ten as much as possible. So I don't watch a lot of Big Ten football because it's boring and it's disappointing. And usually they're on at noon when there's other games on. So I can honestly say, usually I just assume that Iowa's 8-4, 7-5. Isn't that on Kirk Ferentz's resume?
And if you're a Big Ten fan out there, you can find him on Twitter at MidMajor Matt. Let us know what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, what our opinions are right, wrong. There's a lot of fan base out there for the Big Ten action, and you can reach out to me at Drew Martin Betts as well. Any questions, happy to answer them on the podcast. Next game up in the Mountain West, we got UNLV at Wyoming. Looks like the Cowboys laying 9.5 in Laramie, 48 the total, Matt.
Thank goodness. I had Tulsa last week on the money line. Thank goodness that Wyoming was finally semi-exposed. I'm very disappointed because that week 1 game against Missouri clearly didn't want to play in Wyoming. They get that victory. And then, look, I was on Texas State. I thought it was a great spot play. Texas State moved up and down the field, had one bad pick six, and they lose the cover. And then Wyoming, a team against Idaho, who has lost to their last FBS opponents by, I feel like, 180 points. They only beat them 21-16. Even worse for Wyoming, they come out of the game banged up. 3 different offensive linemen got hurt. There's a running back who got hurt. Another guy has sustained a concussion. Look, I don't love this UNLV team. They're 1-2. They beat Southern Utah like they should have. They played Arkansas State, who ran up and down the field. And then they hung tough a little bit against Northwestern, but couldn't get a lot going. I like teams sometimes coming off a bye week, especially if they have a rough start, because they get to kind of refresh themselves. I was reading some quotes from Tony Sanchez, the head coach, that they spent a lot of time focusing on Wyoming instead of themselves during the bye week. The question is, can Armani Rogers do anything? The kid was so highly touted when he came in, and he's just been so disappointing when it comes to throwing the ball. Wyoming can be beaten through the air, but I don't know if Armani Rogers can be the guy to do that.
Interesting breakdown there with UNLV. Kind of a lot of talk here in town about the UNLV program, maybe not heading in the right direction. Tony Sanchez possibly being on the hot seat. So I'm starting to think these are, important games that they need to start be winning or start heading in a different direction there. Talking about the running Rebels. Heading to the Pac-12 here. Washington State at Utah. Man, the Utes with a tough Friday night lights loss at USC. I bet on Utah, Matt, and, kind of handicapping the handicap with Moss going out and with the quarterback Huntley banged up as well. I'll tell you, going into it, I don't necessarily think Utah was the wrong side. However, it didn't cash. So, backers of Utah don't like to hear that. Either way, having to host Washington State here, the Fighting Mike Leashes, 56.5 the total, -6 or -5. That's Utah laying in Salt Lake City.
Well, the question is how good is Utah's secondary? And when you've got the Gordon kid who has filled in admirably for Gardner Minshew, throwing 9 touchdowns last week, but giving up 67 points to UCLA, who had not been very good offensively so far this season. So you have to wonder where Washington State's head is. You're going to get an angry Utah team at home. It's homecoming for the Utes. They've had the extra day to prepare, the extra day to hear how poor they were as a team. If you believe in Utah's secondary, then you're probably going to take them. Or if you believe that Wazoo's got some sort of hangover after a really tough loss to UCLA, I kind of just hope Utah wins. I've got a live ticket on them to win the Pac-12. If they're going to do that, they've got to win this game. They've really just lost all. Losing to USC, they've lost their safety cushion. They have to keep winning now if they want to win this conference. And I think they could win outright. Maybe you consider a teaser. If you want to tease it down 6 points, find a couple of other spreads that are really tight and then tease those down at to essentially a pick 'em. Maybe that's where you look at here.
I got you, because I think Utah's the right side, and I'm not a big teaser guy, especially in college football, but that -6 number, man, it scares me. I could just see Kyle Whittingham and company just kind of sitting on it there, so I like that look. Possibly a teaser towards Utah, teasing it down to what? Pick 'em, right, Matt?
Yeah, you tease it down to a pick 'em, and let's say you like Florida State. We talked about them earlier. They are 6.5 or 7-point favorites. You tease them down to essentially 1 point or a pick 'em. Maybe there's another game. I mean, SMU is around a 6 or 7 number. I'm not necessarily saying tease SMU and Florida State. I'm just saying if you want to do that in college football and you like a team but it's too many points, you bring the number down to a more comfortable number where they essentially win, and then you're getting the same team, and you're getting not bad value if to make the teaser, big enough.
Great stuff, Matt. Follow him on Twitter at MidMajor Matt. Myself at Drew Martin Betts. Any questions? Love to answer them at the end of the podcast. We got Fresno State at New Mexico State up next. Seeing 63.5 as the total, minus 17.5. Fresno State laying on the highway.
New Mexico State coming off the I-25 rivalry game. I was stunned to see that score at halftime. They lose 55-52. I got to wonder where New Mexico State's head is at. That was probably one of their better chances at a win this year. They've got Incarnate Word and UTEP coming up in November, so maybe they win those games. New Mexico State lost 58-7, 62-10, 31-10, and 55-52. I like the Atkins kid as a quarterback. He's not a terrible quarterback. They could put up some points. Fresno State, though, coming off the 34-20 win against Sacramento State, they lost in 2 overtimes to Minnesota, and then they play that game at USC pretty close. I like the Reina kid at quarterback. They've got some decent wide receivers. We could see a lot of points scored in this one because New Mexico State may not necessarily be focused for this one after losing the big rivalry game.
He's MidMajor Matt. Get his service 3-day all access for only $29 using the coupon code MM29 at checkout. Check it out at sportsmemo.com. MidMajor Matt, his handicapper page. Check it out for 3-day all access using the coupon code MM29 at checkout. Makes it only $29. Good one here, Matt. And it's the late night slate, so a lot of tickets written on it. Degenerate special, so to speak. Talking Hawaii. The Rainbow Warriors at the Nevada Wolfpack. Seeing minus 2.5 here. Nevada laying in Reno. 65 the total.
Yeah, it's look. First off, you have to tell me, is Cole McDonald going to last the whole game? He's been pulled several times this year. Cole McDonald is worth the price of admission by himself in this one. But as I said, I think it was twice already or 3 times already. Hawaii has pulled the quarterback. They've only played one road game this year, 52-20. They lost at Washington. They're coming off a 35-16 win over Central Arkansas, who is a very respectable FCS team. My worry about Hawaii always is, the traveling. But since you said it is a late game, that's not as much of an issue. A 10:30 kickoff, I'm not good with the time zone difference for Hawaii, but 10:30 kickoff has to be a reasonable time for Hawaii. Nevada has won 3 of 4. They beat Purdue at home. They beat Weber State in a low-scoring game, and then they did a workmanlike victory at UTEP 37-21. The loss came against Oregon, who was really angry. They won 77-6. Nevada's not a bad team, but there's a reason why this line is short. I think there are people out there who believe Hawaii can get over their past road woes because of the reasonable start time. They believe in Cole McDonald. They believe in Nick Rolovich, who's doing good things at this thing. So I believe that's why the short number is. I'm just hesitant with Hawaii on the road. I much appreciate them and much back them more when it comes to the islands than it does on the road.
Yeah, and Matt, I mean, so are you staying off of this? Because this is a game I look towards Hawaii, man. I mean, this number is kind of jumping off the board. I personally feel the wrong team's favored. Are you going to get involved in it?
Well, first off, I'll see how the day goes. I'm not going to. But the one thing I'll say for the Hawaii game is everybody likes to make fun of the Hawaii game because it's the last game of the night and chasers chase. I'm not necessarily a chaser. So if I have a bad day or if I don't have a lean, I'm not going to play it just because it's the last game. Hawaii last year on the road, they were a favorite once. They went 0-1 against the spread. They were a road dog 5 times and went 2-3 against the spread. They have the better offense in this game. They have the better quarterback in this game. They may have the better coach. I don't know. Jay Norvell's not terrible as a head coach, so there are some edges here. It's just I never like Hawaii on the road. But yeah, I could see where I would lean towards it if I was like you.
Okay, all right, Matt. And that was the last game, right?
That is the last game.
All right, he's MidMajor Matt. Check out his package on sportsmemo.com, MM29 at checkout for his 3-day all access for under $30, so less than $10 a day. MM29 is that coupon code. Matt, anything else you want to throw out before we shut this down?
I just want to say, look, as we get more and more into the college football season, spot plays are going to become more and more of a factor. When you do your handicapping, don't just look at the matchup. Look at who's coming up next. Look at who they just came off of playing, who's coming off a bye week. There are things but that beneath the surface that people should look at when it comes to handicapping these college football games.
All right, Matt. Good stuff. As always, follow him on Twitter at MidMajor Matt. Guys, we'll be right back with Robbie Vino and the rest of the college football Every Game on the Board podcast.